And good afternoon to the cadets and to the seafarers family, friends that attended today. I think looking around, it's more of students than families. Nonetheless, I think the topic that is assigned to me this afternoon is about life is an expedition. It's about, I think, 2:30. This is sleeping time or siesta time. And I know that looking at the schedule that you have quite a lot of speakers and a lot of programs that you have undertaken today. Pag napakarami na dagdag sa inyo, and alam ko talaga baka napupuno na kayo magiginig, but I'll try to be as interesting to wake you up so that you'll be able to perhaps learn some lessons that on the topic that is assigned to me today, that is life is an expedition. Well, life is like an expedition. Anything that you do in your life, like the career that you have chosen to be a seafarer, you have chosen this kind of career, it's an expedition. Going to school and finishing college degree is an expedition. Getting married or getting into an adventure like the Mount Everest expedition or the voyage of the Balangay, they are all expedition. But today, let me bring you to that kind of expedition that we just recently finished, momentarily. We say that for the time being, we made a stop because almost for 1 year and a half, we've been doing this. Not only that, since 2004, wala na akong ginawa sa buhay ko except mag-expedition. Umakyat ng Mount Everest, umakyat ng bundok sa iba't ibang lugar sa buong in other parts of the world, and then after that, mula sa bundok, naglayag. So parang mukhang puro happening yung buhay namin, puro expedition. But today, and I think it is important that you should, especially the maritime students, those who would like to take up seafaring as your career and vocation. Siguro importante na maintindihan nyo ito. That would explain why you have chosen this kind of a career. So today, the expedition is, you would call it, saan ba yung wala natin? Dito. Okay. It's the voyage of the Balangay. A voyage of the Balangay is a journey into history. Let me bring you back into history. So, if you look at that, the purpose of this voyage is to trace the migration of our forefathers. Para maintindihan nyo kung saan tayo nanggaling. Nanggaling ba tayo sa kung anong lugar or anyway. So, if you look at that, this is more of an artist's tradition of how our forefathers, as they move through their waves of migration. Ito noon, of course, modern na masyado. Yung ating mga ninuno, they were Austronesian-speaking people. It is a linguistic whose origin came from the southern coast of mainland Asia. I don't know if you remember your history. We've been taught, ako, ng kabataan ko, I was taught that we're a product of Indonesian migration. Galing sa Indonesia, Indonesian A and B, ganon. But if you look into our history, and recent archaeological findings show that dito tayo nanggaling. Yan, mapa. So, dito tayo nanggaling. This part. Yan ang pinanggalingan natin, which is now the present coast of southern China, Vietnam, and Cambodia. Diyan nanggaling yung mga forefathers, yung mga tao ngayon dito. Incidentally, we were now called Filipinos. Now, Of course, yung mga nandito, they ended up inhabiting the vast Pacific and Indian Ocean. Ganon sila, umikot sila dito. Hanggang dito, if you look at this is what they call Easter Island. Easter Island, across dyan, wala na dito, is the tip of South America. And they've got ng 19th century, si Rizal, he was being, nakita ni Rizal, ni-ridicule yung mga Indio. Ang tawag sa atin noon, Indio eh. They were being ridiculed. Sabi lang, itong mga Indio ito eh, good for nothing. No better than an animal whose brain has atrophied. Lumit na yung brain niya. So, talagang namalaman ni Rizal, galit na galit si Rizal. Sabi niya, it cannot be like that. Because, siyempre si Rizal, you know, he was a genius. The pride of the whole Malay race. Sabi niya ni Rizal, we cannot be that inferior. We cannot be no better than an animal whose brain has atrophied. So, alam mong ginawa ni Rizal? He looked back into history. He looked back into the writings of the chroniclers, yung mga historians that came in the wave of conquest. Alam niyo kilala ba niyo si Antonio Pigafetta, yung historian ni Magellan? Alam niyo? So, importante yan kasi pumalan. Now, so, he looked into the writings of the historians. Si Rizal, ibig sabihin, Pigafetta, Antonio Morga, Collins Chirino, itong mga historians. And pinag-aralan niya, tinignan niya, ano bang sinulat nitong mga historians tungkol sa mga naabutan nila? Ang naabutan lang, di pa tawag Pilipino noon eh. Wala pang Pilipinas noon. Mga isla tayo. Ang itong nakita ni Pigafetta. And it's important that you should see this because it has relationship why we're supplying 1/3 ng panahon ko noon. The OTC ko, 20%. Balita ko ngayon, mga 1/3 na ng lahat ng seafarers in the world are Filipino seafarers. Itong nakita ni Pigafetta, when Magellan came in here, that they saw that the seas were gleaming with sea craft of different shapes and sizes. Iba't ibang mga sakayan. And we use the sea as our natural highway. Yung karagatan. And Pigafetta saw, ito sa sulat nito ni Pigafetta, as Rizal was already narrating, they saw some ships with 100 rowers in one side. Can you imagine 100 rowers in one side? Ito sulat nito. Yung 1 square meter, pagsagwan ka, you need at least minimum of 1 meter. Kung 100 yan, easily 100 meters long yan. Can you imagine? Your forefathers were building already ships of that size long before the coming of the Spaniards. And then you alam yun, ano? You'll be wondering. Not even the Vikings. Ang Vikings, sikat eh. Kasi palagi kayo nanonood ng mga Western movies, the Vikings had built ships of that size, but our forefathers were already building a ship of that size. So, and then nakita ni Pigafetta that the people were mild in manner, well-dressed. Bisabit, naka-self. Alam mo yung self, very expensive in those times. Courteous and polite. And they were very confident, regal and proud. Talagang with bearing. And they love music and drama. Yun ang ating mga forefathers. As a matter of fact, yung diet nila, they even have, may panikom, hindi ko alam po anong panikom, but they have cinnamon as a part of the regular diet. Dito, kung hindi ka pupunta sa Starbucks, hindi ka makatikim ng cinnamon. Our forefathers simply have that as a part of the diet. Again, it was not Rizal na nag-magic ito. Reading from the writings of Pigafetta. And they were fed with mais. Alam mo yung mais, corn. Kay Radyo Humabon, pinakain sila ng mais. Alam niyo yung mais or corn, hindi indigenous sa Philippines. Hindi yung natural. The mais came from Latin America. Paano nakaabot yun dito? Bago dumating sa Magellan, hindi dinala ni Magellan yun. They were fed with corn. And corn is not indigenous to the Philippines. It came from Latin America. Yung natural niya, doon siya nanggaling. So, what does it mean? Long before the coming of the Spaniards, we were crossing the Pacific already. On that kind of boat na nakita niyo kanina. Now, that is how kagaling yung ating mga ninuno in terms of their mastery of the sea. So, again, proud, regal, the whole island is prosperous. And then you have a very confident people. Sabi ni Rizal, they even love music and drama. And they have the facility to speak in Latin and Spanish, which they learned by themselves. It was Pigafetta who was writing that. Because of the exposure, perhaps, of the noblemen to the people there in Indonesia, Moluccas Island, where the Portuguese are there. So, sabi ni Rizal, what happened to these proud, regal, and confident people? Why did they turn out to be described as an Indio, good for nothing, no better than animal, and whose brain has atrophied? And Rizal looked into the cause, what happened to the deterioration of the Filipino. In many cases, that malaise extended up to the present. That people take things for granted. And then Rizal identified the main cause of that, and that is colonialism. When our people were taken out from their natural environment. As sabi ni Rizal, when that subjugation stretched from years and years into decades, and decades into centuries, what was good on that people were gone. And it turned out to be as what the Spanish writers are describing now, the Indios. That they've lost confidence in themselves. So it's importante na malaman nyo na bago tayo dumating mga dayuhan, talagang we're proud and regal people. And then also, why have you chosen being a seafarer? It is not simply because it provides the biggest, high salary. Ang karamihan sa inyo, tingin nyo siguro ganun. In fact, it is in your veins. Your forefathers sailed from mainland Asia looking for greener pasture, no different from the present OFW, looking for opportunities for their families. As our forefathers look for new and fertile land, it is in your veins to be a master of the sea. You are an inheritor of that great legacy. So if 1/3 of the world's seafarers Filipino, siyempre natural lang yan. The sea is natural to us. But then what happened? Colonialism robbed